Nice to meet you at last.
Cool
Hello.
thing. Yeah, absolutely. Ditto. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad to meet the face behind all the Facebook posts of
Oh,
that
goodness.
stuff that not as only is more frequent than me about climate stuff, but
Yeah.
more on point and well informed and all that sort of stuff. So I'm on you for all that. Um, however, yeah, thank you also for being up for chatting about the topic at hand, which
Mm.
is the the petition, which I was glad to be there on the day for and
Oh,
be part
excellent.
uh, and meet um, and chat with some of the people involved on the day too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying that I'm in my 70s. And so, oh, what with stuff that has to be done on a daily basis and fitting in with my partner, Christine, and so on like that. Yeah, I just don't really have as much time or energy as or organizational skills as I would like. But I do try and amplify what our local Extinction Rebellion group are doing, and I'm one of the sort of small steering group for our local 350 Habitat group. So yeah, so that's me. Mm.
Right. Uh, I saw some of the creative, what is the word, exploits, creative um, events that happened on Friday as part
Oh
of the
yes,
strike.
yeah,
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 with
yes. They were pouring buckets of green water all over each other. That was pretty
greenwashing.
cool. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the main thing is it got
Fun.
into the Christchurch press. So
That's wonderful. Yeah.
that, yeah, yeah.
Is that the same sort of crew you're involved with, or you
Well,
know
I'm
them
not
from a different?
directly involved with Extinction Rebellion
Okay.
or Restore Passenger Rail, but I've got a lot of friends who are, and
Okay.
we do what we can to amplify that message.
Yep.
That's kind of, I regard it as kind of division of labor because I totally get what they're doing and fully support it. Um, but I don't think that on its own, just blocking roads or whatever is enough. There needs to be some team or group of people who explain it and justify it to the public. So that's what I see my role or our role in 350, the local group of 350 is doing, is kind of acting as an amplifier or an intermediary or whatever. So that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really important. It's there are definitely different roles and things that need to be done,
Yeah.
and working together in this challenge of getting through lack of
Yeah.
media attention or the insufficient media attention. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm asking. I should be asking you the questions, not answering. Um, Speaking of questions, I had them right here. Oh no, hang on, it's different. Here we are. See, I'm so well organized. I I get lost in my preparations. Anyway, Graham, this is the first time we've met, and I really
Yeah.
only know your name through Facebook. Can you
Right.
tell us about your background and what led you to this point that you're so thoroughly spending so much time posting on Facebook
Well,
and elsewhere climate crisis?
yeah, I've always been um, kind of interested and concerned about environmental issues generally, ever since I was a teenager, really. I grew up in East Africa
Oh well,
and got involved in um, mountain tramping and visiting the wildlife parks and goodness knows what. And then went to uni, did chemistry, came to New Zealand, um, and it kind of all went into the background until um, about 10 years ago when I started getting involved with the local 350 group. And then I I just finally became more and more alarmed about it. The more I learned about it, and I never really intended it to take over my retirement, but that's what it's done, because it's kind of it. You know, I'm almost lost for words. It's like once you know about it, you can't pretend not to know about it, and you realise that the problems are almost insurmountable, but you just have to do what you can. So really, it's become more and more something I've been involved with over the last 10 years. And I guess one key part of that is, you know, you start off standing outside banks and wanting them to stop investing in fossil fuel industries and that sort of thing. And then finally, I was forced to look at my own carbon footprint and think, yeah, I've got to stop flying and I've got to stop driving so far, and I've got to get an EV. So that's like a continual process of looking at my own carbon footprint, which really has to go together with all the other stuff. So that's basically what got me into it. And I've been inspired by quite a number, you know, half a dozen or more local people who are well ahead of where I am. And I still look up to them as being people that you know, whose advice I follow and whose lead I admire.
Yeah. They locally, you mean, or
yeah, mostly
online?
locally. Yeah. So people in our own 350 group and people in the Extinction Rebellion leadership team and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, you look up to them in terms of examples,
well,
climate
yeah,
activism or personal response or what?
All of that kind of being aware of the politics, taking personal responsibility, being able to suggest good ways to respond. Yeah, in all sorts of ways. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah.
What did you imagine your retirement to be like before you started going down this particular rabbit hole?
Goodness. Well, my two main interests are in tramping and fiddling with electronics. So I thought I'd be able to do a bit more of both of those. But in fact, they've both taken a major back step. You know, I'm just soaked up with this stuff. Yeah.
How many hours a week do you think you spend, or how many hours a day even?
Oh goodness,
climate
including just informal time mucking around on Facebook. Probably 3, 4, 5 hours a day.
But do you do other stuff to do with the climate crisis in other ways?
Well, I try to keep up with the science, and I get daily science updates from some of the academic outlets, and so anything that's particularly relevant or cogent or seems impactful, I suck that onto an informal database that I've got. I've got basically two databases. One is climate science. Another one is the economic security migration aspect of the climate crisis. So I've got I don't know, it must be 1,500, 1,600 links to research or reputable you know, news outlets and that sort of thing. So that's what I use for a lot of the Facebook posts that I do. And I do try and create graphics, like create posters that I can use on protests. I've got about 20 odd A2 posters that we wave around at the climate marches, and we also our 350 group stands outside Christchurch Airport entrance once a month with some huge banners, like 2 by 1 meter banners about flying less or not flying or what's that sort of thing. So there's a bit of work involved in creating those graphics. And last week I got involved in the Workers' Educational Association in Christchurch, and I was asked to do a talk on Earth's climate history, which I'm a complete amateur at. But so preparing that talk took me hours and hours of learning about it myself before I was able to present something. Yeah, and also we're another thing I've been involved with for the last 6 or 7 years is fundraising for tree planting in Uganda, where I grew up.
Oh,
So
wow.
that soaks up a lot of time. Right.
You would do.
Yeah. So anyway, that's me.
Right. How much do you think your science background informed or provided a basis for your understanding of the science and your motivation for taking it seriously and responding in kind?
Yeah, very largely, because my own background is in physical chemistry, and I did my own little honours project back in the dark ages was to do with the infrared spectroscopy.
In?
Infrared spectroscopy.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
So, and that's quite relevant to atmospheric physics.
Right.
But that's exactly what greenhouse gases do. They absorb in the far infrared. So, and then my final year teaching, although I'm basically just a high school teacher, my final job was teaching for 17 years at Canterbury Uni in pre-degree bridging programs. And in my final year, I was asked to teach part of the stage 1 physical chemistry course, and that involved teaching the basics of climate science as part of the topic.
Right.
So, that sort of made it even more important that you can't teach the course and walk away and pretend that what you teach is irrelevant to everyday life. So that was an even bigger incentive to get involved and start doing stuff. Yeah.
Let's talk about the petition from the other day, last month.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the 3 main requests you included in the petition?
Oh, got to go dredge back into my short-term memory now. That's a real challenge at my age. But basically, have a on the Radio New Zealand website, have a page dedicated to climate and environment, and linked to from the homepage, so that when you go to the Stuff homepage, they've got a climate tab, and when you go to the BBC homepage, they've got a climate tab, and when you go to the Guardian homepage, they've got a climate tab. Radio New Zealand doesn't. So that was the first demand. The second one was and this is really the guts of it, is to stop siloing climate damage or climate science and climate impacts from business news and economic reporting and analysis. So, for example, when you listen to their business desk, or when you listen to politics slot on 9 to noon, it's like the climate crisis doesn't exist. Whereas the reality is that more and more, every government minister should be a climate minister, and every reporter and every journalist involved in reporting on business and the economy should be informed about the impact of climate on the economy, because they are not siloed. They're increasingly linked and going to become disastrously so in the next 2 or 3 decades. And yet they're just not doing that. Their investment advisor, now what's her name? Mary Holm. Yeah, she does a little slot during the afternoons with Jesse Mulligan, investment advice. And I actually emailed her and I said, why don't you, in your investment advice, why don't you acknowledge the fact that the future economy is going to be seriously impacted by the climate crisis, and that the old mantra of, in the long term, the economy always grows, that's not true anymore.
Mm.
And she replied saying she felt that was outside her area of expertise. And I kind of thought, what? You're
Mm.
advising people on their investment portfolios, and yet you don't understand the future of the economy and the impacts of the fact that the economy is a wholly owned subset of a healthy ecosystem. But he just didn't see that as relevant. So I just found that unbelievable. So that's what those are the two main things. Climate on your website, and stop siloing climate and environment from the economy, from business, and from politics.
Right. I found our action station
Oh yeah.
brief before.
Mhm.
Can you just give me half a second? I'm just
Sure.
trying not.
Sure.
I thought I'd turn something on the stove on a very low level, but I think I can
Okay.
spot by now. So
Okay, that's the sort of thing I do.
Yeah. Still getting to know how that oven works. I mean, the stove.
So,
It's a very unusual stove. Anyway, look,
right.
so we call on RNZ to take responsibility for consistently pointing out science linking the increasing frequency and severity of adverse weather events.
Yep.
Right. And then ensuring business and finance reporters take responsibility for explaining increasing and potentially devastating impact of global resource limitation issues, the climate crisis on our economy. And C, instate a new page dealing exclusively with climate and ecology. Right.
Yep.
So A and B are like what you said too. Well,
They kind of overlap, really, don't they?
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
B and C are a subset of A, really.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. You're talking about the page and reporters, right? Understanding and siloing. Yeah, that's a good word. Separating out. I've often wondered that. Well, not often, but recently I've wondered that about the university system. I have a sister who's quite down the other rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, and her and a partner, and over a conversation we had several years ago now, I was accused of being not corrupt exactly, I can't remember the word, but biased or something because I've got a university education.
Oh, okay.
And their point was that the theory, I suppose, goes that universities are corrupt, therefore anyone with a university education is corrupt, out of the system, something along those lines. But my thinking, the kernel of truth in that, I mean, there are two kernels of truth in any criticism of university systems these days, I see. One is that some departments are compromised by accepting money from, for example, fossil fuel industries, for sponsorship and that kind of thing, or maybe producing, even being paid to produce reports for people they might not, in fairness, realize. But if they do realize, then obviously that compromises potentially the report findings. And then secondly, the siloing effect, over specializing to the point of not having a wider picture, a bigger picture view of impacts. So, for example, someone who's only focused on modeling, creating great software for models, won't necessarily see the local glaciers melting up country a bit, whereas an observational scientist will see them melting and maybe not realize that the models predicted them to melt at a much slower level, and so they're not talking to each other, then, and they're not talking outwards to wider society through media,
Yeah.
then yeah, there's a breakdown in the overall communication within society.
Yeah.
My question would be, do you have any comments on that, or how do you see that kind of?
Yeah, well, I get what you're saying, and I agree. I mean, although I'm not an academic, I've worked with and alongside most of the chemistry lecturers at uni when I was there, because we used the same labs. I went to a lot of the seminars, made friends with some of them, got advice from some of them, and well, a classic case of what you just said was, after I retired, a bunch of us funded a full-page ad. This was in 2019 in the Don Post,
Oh wow,
and it was under the banner of Extinction Rebellion,
okay.
and it was asking the New Zealand government to get to net zero by 2025, which was an impossible ask. But that's not the point. The point was that it was a full-page ad, and we also sent it to every MP as a hard copy. Now, I actually asked a number of academics that I knew to sign that, and some of them did. And I went to one of the climate scientists in the physics department. I didn't know her and hadn't known her, but she wouldn't sign it, but she said we should meet. So I dropped into uni and had a coffee with her, and she didn't sign it because she felt it would compromise her academic independence, which I kind of understand. But then I said to her as nicely as I could, don't you feel that your understanding of what's going on demands that you get politically active?
Right.
And she said, oh, well, I suppose I should really at some point. But it was like she was so focused on the academic stuff that she didn't see any reason why she should take it any further than that, which is kind of weird to me. I mean, you understand that we're destroying our kids' future, and yet you don't feel obliged to actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it's another example of siloing. It's just dissociating that from the real world.
Disassociation. Ooh, that's a good
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Talking about the psychology of it all.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of the academics are like that. They don't see that it's anything to do with them. They don't see any need to take personal responsibility.
Right. It's like we've got a culture of disengagement from politics.
Yeah.
Which is just one aspect of what's the other word? Not disassociation, but self-denial. Denialism.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I'm looking for it. It's just siloing again, isn't it? It's just
another aspect of it, or symptom of it.
Yeah.
I hesitate to mention this guy's name. However, he did make a series of points. He overstated quite horrifically, but that can have its place. Dramatic effect usually has its place on the movies or sort. But what are your feelings these days of Guy McPherson? Do you know the name? Guy McPherson.
Oh yes, yeah. That was starting point because I went to one of his talks at Canterbury 10 years ago, and it was at that point that I got signed up with 350. And at that time, I thought he was being doomist. Now I'm not so sure, but I feel that I still think he's probably being a bit doomist, but now I guess I know a bit more about the science and the uncertainty of tipping points. I suspect he may not be, but he's saying this will happen and that will happen, instead of saying beyond this point we can't predict, or beyond, it might go here or it might go there. We might end up at 3 degrees or we might end up at 8.5 degrees. He's taken the worst case scenario and pushed that. And I still think it's probably slightly counterproductive to do what he's doing. Because if it doesn't pan out, then people will say, oh, you're bullshit.
Yeah.
And you always were. And
just to play devil's advocate, because I'm completely what's the word, undecided or open to persuasion, but I know you're doing stuff, and 350 and all these other organizations are doing stuff, but which effect is it really having in moving the needle, so to speak, or getting genuine structural change from governments, not just in New Zealand, but everywhere else?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think it's marginal.
Yeah. So that flips back to Guy McPherson then. He's overstating for dramatic effect, I presume. I presume he's conscious that, he doesn't actually believe that all societies everywhere will be extinct in 10 years, like he said about 10 years ago. He might not have genuinely believed that. Presumably he was overstating or deliberately taking the worst case scenario, not just for dramatic effect, but for, that's the impact. Trying to get people bringing attention to the cause, so that people like you who do connect with enough of the science, of the truth of the science, then get motivated. Could that be? I mean, I know I should be asking him rather than you as to. Do you see any validity in that approach, given the lack of response of the rest of responsible citizens and governments in that?
I wish I knew. This is something that I agonize about all the time. I'm constantly wondering about the best thing to do, and I'm aware that a lot of climate activists think they know what to do, when in fact none of us knows what to do. I mean, the Restore Passenger Rail people are convinced that the only way forward is to glue your hands to a motorway and get arrested. And good on them, because they're getting into the public, getting into the media, making an impact. I don't know what the best thing to do is. I don't think that promoting doomism is the best way forward. I think probably it's best to be objective about the science and say it could go this way, it could go that way. Let's make sure it doesn't go to the extreme. But to be honest, I don't know, and I don't know what impact the activist groups are having. My gut feeling is that we are having a bit of an impact. And a little vignette, I suppose, to reinforce that is, in the last 6 or 7 years, I've had published in the press, I think, over 60 letters about climate. Myself.
60 what, sorry?
60 letters published in the letters page in the press.
Fantastic. It's amazing.
And the last one I had published was something along the lines of, to know about the climate crisis and to choose inaction is a deliberate choice, a conscious, deliberate choice to wreck the future. And I worded it as strongly as I dared say, because I know they don't like publishing catastrophic stuff. So I worded that as strongly as I did, and it did get published. And then somebody brought to my attention that the editor of the newspaper, Kamala Harris, had actually read that and had decided that that letter was what made her go out and start looking for an e-bike.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So that's
well done.
a little sort of thing, that kind of thing that kind of gives me hope.
Small victory.
small victories. And I think that's all we can hope for.
Yeah.
So just, you plod on, you do this, you do that, you don't know whether it has an effect. We turn up to council meetings, we'll be there at the council again on Wednesday trying to stop them building the terrace airport or approving it. And the councillors who are environmentally aware say to us, look, keep doing it. Please keep doing what you're doing because it does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had ECAN councillors say the same thing. Please keep doing what you're doing because believe me, it does. They do know the council does listen. It does influence them. So that's what gives me a little bit of hope.
Yep. That dovetails with two vignettes, if you like, or mini stories. Yeah, one of the first things I appreciated about studying politics undergrad was the message that our democracy is a participatory democracy. It's not just about voting one day. It's about what you do on all the other days of the year, how you contribute. So media is an important part of that. The second one is a group of students went to the White House and weren't expecting to meet him, but Barack Obama suddenly appeared through a doorway and sat down with them, chatted. And I remember reading that he asked them to keep putting pressure on him. And my first reaction was, that's a stink message. It seems really unfair to put that weight of pressure on students to ask a grown man to do his job for him, the most important, most powerful single person, perhaps, in the planet. And he's asking a group of kids to help him do his job, sort of thing. But basically, that's how pressure politics works. It's not just participatory democracy, but you're going to form pressure groups to mobilize support for a particular political direction or policy or legal development. And so, it's in that sense, it's entirely valid.